Hello everybody, in this video we'll be discussing the different world events within the Sea of Thieves. But since that would take way too long, this episode will be the first half of a two-part series, this half being on the land-based world events. But what are world events? To put it simply, the world events are the interactable events that exist within the world at any given moment. For the most part, there can only be one world event active at a time, and once it's been completed, there will be a short cooldown period of about 5 to 10 minutes before the next world event can spawn. These world events consist of the Skeleton Forts and the Ashen Winds, being the land-based events, the Skeleton Fleet, the Ghost Armada, and the Burning Blade being the sea-based events. The only ways for a world event to cycle onto the next one is if a crew completes the world event or if it hasn't been interacted with for some time. The time it takes for a world event to despawn can vary depending on the world event and the level of interaction it has had. But as long as a player is actively present at a world event, it will not despawn. Let's get to the individual world events. The first ones we will cover are the Skeleton Forts. There are 3 separate forts we will cover, but they all function the same. The first fort is the simple Skeleton Fort, which is marked with a giant skull cloud. This cloud, like all the other world event markings, can be seen from anywhere in the world, though do keep in mind that the normal cloud markings can be obscured by the storm that looms throughout the world. The Skeleton Fort can activate on any one of the 8 fortress islands throughout the map. For the Shores of Plenty, we have 3 forts: Keelhaul Fort, Sailor's Not a Stronghold, and Hidden Spring Keep. For the Wilds, we also have 3 forts: Kraken Watchtower, Sharkfin Camp, and Skull Keep. And for the Ancient Isles, we only have 2 forts: Lost Gold Fort and the Crow's Nest Fortress. And for the Devil's Roar region, we have the Molten Sands Fortress, the only fortress in this region. All of these forts act the same, along with having the same loot, all except for the Molten Sands Fortress and the Devil's Roar, with the fort being on an active volcano and with the loot being ashen, ultimately doubling the profit for any who complete it. But let's get to the actual details of the Skeleton Forts. Once you arrive at the fort with the skull cloud above it, you'll be met with instant aggression by the siege towers, volleying cannonballs in your ship's direction. However, if you manage to get your ship docked by the shoreline, or a player to set foot on the island, the siege towers will lose their aggression, allowing for you to finish any repairs to any damages made. Or if you want to avoid taking damage altogether, you can send a crewmate to the island to disable the towers so you may safely dock. But once you've docked at the active fort, you'll notice that there are waves of skeletons greeting any who show up on their shores. These skeletons can consist of multiple different types. There are the normies, the plant skeletons, the shadow skellies, and the goldies. The normies have basic attributes: the plants regenerate in water, the shadows are invincible at night but can be re-solidified with a lantern, and the goldies are incredibly resilient unless they are splashed with water. If you want any more details on the different types of skeletons and the different weapons they can use, then you'll have to visit my Order of Souls episode of this series. But once you've reached wave number 13, you'll face the Ashen Captain duo, the Ashen Guardian and the Ashen Keymaster. This wave will be much like the normal skeleton waves, but they will be accompanied by the Ashen duo. Once the Guardian is defeated, they will drop a skull, gold pouch, and skeleton orders, leading to the Ashen chest. Once the Keymaster is defeated, they will also drop a skull and pouch. However, instead of skeleton orders leading to a chest, they will drop an Ashen Key, which unlocks the Ashen chest. Once both Ashen Captains and the rest of the skeletons are defeated, you will face the final boss wave. Instead of having a skeleton captain, these skeletons will be accompanied by a skeleton lord. For those who haven't done the story quests known as Tall Tales, this will be the first time you will face one of these monstrosities. In regards to Tall Tales, however, we will cover those entirely in a separate episode. But when facing a skeleton lord, you will notice that they are quite different from the other skeletons. These monsters have magical abilities that can send your crew spiraling. From summoning skeletons to creating a shockwave that can even damage your boat, these menaces can truly pack a punch. But if you want any more detail on them, I have them fully covered in my Order of Souls episode. Once defeated on a skeleton fort, they will drop a stronghold skull, skeleton orders leading to a rag and bone crate, which is sold to a specific vendor on a specific sea post, and a stronghold key to unlock the fort's treasure vault. Once you open this vault, you will discover a stash of treasure for each of the main trading companies. And along with these assortments of goodies, we will always receive stronghold treasures, the bulk of the profit for completing a skeleton fort. Stronghold loot consists of a stronghold chest, a stronghold skull, an ancient bone dust crate, and a stronghold gunpowder barrel. Each of these items ranging from 3,000 to 5,000 gold. Though do be careful of the stronghold gunpowder barrel, for it packs a punch 4 times larger than any normal gunpowder barrel, basically becoming a mini nuke if detonated. These mega kegs are often not sold due to the fear of an enemy targeting it while it's on your ship. though if you're brave enough to carry it, you can either use it for an extremely aggressive attack on the enemy, or you can sell it for a pretty penny. The second skeleton fort is referred to as the Fort of Fortune, aka the FOF. The Fort of Fortune is a legendary and more challenging version of the normal skeleton fort. Instead of a simple skull cloud marking this event, we have a skull cloud with glowing eyes, nose, and a glowing crack in its cranium. With the spawning of this event, one can easily hear a loud blowing of a deep horn from anywhere within the Sea of Thieves. This fort is also capable of spawning at any of the fortress islands, except for the one in the Devil's Roar. Now, the Fort of Fortune acts basically the exact same as a normal skeleton fort, however it is much more rare when it comes to spawning. The siege towers and the skeletons on the island are more aggressive, the skeleton waves have 2 to 3 different types of skeletons per wave, and on the 15th wave you will face a skeleton captain wave, much like the Ashen duo wave of the previous fort, but instead of 2 Ashen captains, it's only 1 normal captain. Once defeated, the captain will drop the first skeleton order, leading to a randomized treasure rather than an Ashen chest. Then once that wave is defeated, you'll face the second captain wave, where the Ashen duo return to wreak havoc. Though instead of dropping a key and a map to an Ashen chest, they'll drop the second and third skeleton orders, leading to other randomized treasures. And once the second captain wave is completed, you'll face the boss wave. Instead of a skeleton lord, you have an Ashen lord. An Ashen lord is the main threat you face for the Ashen Winds event, but when on a Fort of Fortune, it is a bit weaker with its attacks and health. But I will cover the Ashen lord entirely when we cover the Ashen Winds event. The treasures found by the skeleton orders can range from a measly gunpowder barrel to another Ashen Wind skull. No, each Ashen Wind skull goes for 10,000 gold. The Ashen Lord will also drop a Fort of Fortune key, which opens the vault of the fort. Though you should know that the Fort of Fortune key is marked on the map, keeping people from effectively running away and hiding it. But once the vault is open, you will see that the loot of a normal skeleton fort is mere chump change in comparison, harboring the loot of practically 4 normal skeleton forts in a single vault. The assortment of treasures around the piles of stronghold loot are all of higher quality as well. On top of all that, this is the only natural world event in the game that has legendary loot, which can be sold to the mysterious stranger of any tavern to give you Athena's fortune reputation. We will cover the Athenas in a separate episode. The third and final skeleton fort is the Fort of the Damned. This fort is one of the more unique of the world events, as this is the only one that requires a player to activate it, meaning this is the only event that can't spawn naturally. The marking for this event is a skull cloud with red eyes, and no other markings. So if you see this particular cloud, know that there is a crew that started that event, and they're likely still there. In order to activate this fort, you will need to retrieve the 6 Flames of Fate. Flames of Fate are retrieved from the Ferry of the Damned when players die. When a player dies to something specific, like a shark, they will retrieve the blue flame from the Well of Fates on the ferry. There are 6 flames total. Red for when fire causes the death, green for when skeletons, phantoms, or ocean crawlers cause the death, blue for when sharks, sirens, or megalodons cause the death, purple for when a snake's venom or boiling ink causes the death, white for when lightning or an electric thorns effect causes the death, or pink when the player is the cause of death. Once all 6 flames are collected and stored on your ship, you can transfer these flames to their respective statues on the Fort of the Damned. To open the ritual's cage in the center, this cage reveals a headless skeleton. For the final cost to start this ritualistic event is a ritual skull. Ritual skulls can be found occasionally in Ashen chests or in skeleton ships. While the flames can be used over and over again, the ritual skulls are consumed once the Fort of the Damned starts. So if you wish to do more than one Fort of the Damned, you'll have to acquire multiple ritual skulls. Another fact about the Fort of the Damned is that it can coexist with the active world event, meaning it can be started at any point and it won't interrupt the cycle of world events. But once you activate the Fort of the Damned, you will face an entirely new threat: Shadow Skeletons of Fate. These new skeletons act very similarly to Shadow Skeletons, but they can be any one of the 6 Flames of Fate colors, and for them to become solidified, they must be lit up with their respective color. Meaning, if you are facing a wave of red Fate skeletons, then you must retrieve the red flame with your lantern and light them up. Once solidified, they have just as much health as normal skeletons. To fight each of the waves of enemies, it is best to use the statues in the fort to pick up the required Flame of Fate for each round. Fun fact, if you look at the base of the statues, you will see ghostly hands reaching through the grate, for the color that is needed for the skeletons of that wave. On the 5th wave, you will come across Fate Skeleton Captains. These will act the same as normal Fate Skeletons, but with the same health as normal Skelly Captains. This wave acts as a mark for the halfway point for the event. On the 9th wave, you will come across a second captain wave. but these captains will be accompanied by normal Fate skeletons. However, just as the previous captain wave, none of the captains will drop any skulls nor skeleton orders. And on the 10th and final wave, you will face the boss of the fort, the Ghost of Greymarrow. This ghastly memory of a monster who tormented days of old still haunts these waters whenever this ritual is completed. This is the final threat of the Fort of Fortune, but once defeated he will drop a stronghold skull and a Fort of the Damned key for the treasure vault. This key is also marked upon the map. You'll notice that this is the fastest of the forts, with the Fort of the Damned only having 10 waves, as the other forts have 14 and 17. Once you've opened the vault, you'll see a similar amount of treasure as the normal skeleton fort. However, the loot mostly consists of stronghold treasure and mermaid gems. Note, the mermaid gems can be sold to any of the main trading companies, including the Reapers and the Hunter's Call. With the Fort of the Damned having more stronghold loot than the normal skeleton fort, it is clear that the payout is going for more quality rather than quantity. Even though the loot doesn't look as impressive as, say, the Fort of Fortune, the true value lies in the fact that this event is farmable, with the limits only being how many ritual skulls you can acquire, the time you have, and the skills to fight any who come to steal from you. The Fort of the Damned is arguably the fastest way to make money in the Sea of Thieves. Some will attempt to stack multiple Forts of the Damned before cashing in, since selling between each fort would cause it to take longer to accumulate profit, making this event one of the riskiest events for one of the best payouts, when well prepared of course. Next is the Ashen Winds Event. The Ashen Winds Event is marked with a big red tornado, clearly seen from anywhere in the map. Once you make it to whatever island it has activated on, you will notice no aggression, until you reach the point at which the tornado reaches the ground. At the base of the tornado, you will notice a ritual run by skeletons, but once you fire at any one of these skeletons, or simply get too close, the skeletons, along with the ritual site in the center, will crumble to dust as the Ashen Lord appears in the middle. The Ashen Lord is everything a skeleton lord wishes it was. Back when the tyrant known as Flameheart first threatened the seas, these Ashen Lords were his generals for the warfront, capable of incredible destruction. But in order for these beasts to come back from their slumber, the skeletons need to complete a ritual to awaken them. And it's up to us pirates to stop these rituals any chance we get. When it comes to actually facing these Ashen Lords, they too have magical abilities that outrival the abilities of Skeleton Lords. However, Ashen Lords have 3 phases. In the first phase, they can summon a wave of skeletons, they can summon a massive cloud of smoke to obscure your view, they can breathe fire, which melts your health incredibly fast if you're too close, they can materialize molten rocks in the palm of their hands to throw directly at you, or directly up in the air in a mortar-like fashion, and they can simply just swing their massive molten arm at you if you get too close. And even if you aren't right next to them, they can charge up a massive lunge, which can fling you while taking half your health. But once you deal enough damage to the Ashen Lord, they will collapse into a vulnerability period. You can deal damage to them in this period, causing them to get up and start their next phase sooner. And it is believed by some that they can recover some health if they are left alone in this state. And they will taunt you once they get back up on their own efforts. But once they get back from their first vulnerable state, they will enter their second phase, where they will learn to create a massive shockwave, much like the normal Skeleton Lords. However, this one is much larger, and can set you on fire if you're too close. Also, the amount of skeletons summoned is increased during this phase. But once the Ashen Lord is brought into another vulnerability state, then brought into the third and final phase, the quantity of skeletons summoned will increase even more, along with the Ashen Lord learning a new ultimate ability I like to call Raining Hellfire. With this ability, the Ashen Lord falls down to one knee and starts breathing fire in the air, then suddenly turning the atmosphere of the island into that of a volcanic island from the Devil's Roar, causing the water around the island to boil, geysers to form, and a plume of ash to form above, where massive molten boulders will come crashing down within the vicinity. These rocks can range in size, with some being able to instantly kill players, and all being able to damage your ship. Now, having every ability under their tool belt in their final phase, these Ashen Lords are a force to be reckoned with. But once defeated, the Ashen Lord will collapse, while Ashen loot rises out of the ground from geysers. All of the loot together accumulates to a little more than a normal skeleton fort. Though if done right, the Ashen Winds event can be completed much faster than a skeleton fort. And for the main piece of loot, which drops from the Ashen Lord itself, you will receive an Ashen Winds skull. This skull is worth 10,000 gold and can be used as a flamethrower, having the exact same effect as when the Ashen Lord breathes fire, melting enemy health and setting them ablaze. Though keep in mind that there is a limited amount of fuel that the Ashen Winds skull has. The amount of fuel that is left is noticeable by how bright the crystals in the skull are. Once depleted, the glow will be completely diminished. Note, the bigger the player ship, the more skeletons will appear in each summoning, and the more health the Ashen Lord will have. But that's all I have for this half of the episode. We've officially covered all of the land-based world events that exist currently, but in the next video we will cover all of the sea-based world events. I hope you all learned something new. If you find anything I've missed in terms of Skeleton Forts or the Ashen Winds, please make sure to leave a comment below. But thank you all for watching, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.